Shabana, comrades and friends, it really is an honour to stand before you today as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. When I stood for the leadership of our Scottish party last year, journalists kept asking me two questions. The first was, can somebody born in England be the next First Minister of Scotland? Well, for the sake of all of those people in all of those communities who need Labour government's conference, I fully intend to be the next First Minister of Scotland. And the second question I kept being asked was, are you a Corbynista? So I confessed that I voted for Jeremy both times, because the people of Scotland need a Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour government to tackle poverty, inequality and a failing economy, just as much as the people from every other community represented at this conference. Because I tell you this, we know that the forces that threaten the life chances of children growing up by the Mersey are the same ones that threaten the life chances of children growing up by the Clyde. So we should stop dividing people on the basis of nationality and start uniting them on the basis of class. Because the real division in our society is not between Scotland and England. It is between those people who own the wealth and those people who, through their hard work and endeavour, create the wealth. That's the real division in society. And let me say as well that I firmly believe that we will get Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street, and I hope it's sooner, not later. And we'll get him in, not despite the fact he's got principles and integrity. We'll get him in precisely because of the fact that he's got principles and integrity. I was elected on a platform of public ownership, of anti-austerity, and of a redistribution of not just wealth but power, on a conviction that the days are long gone when we could tinker around the edges or manage our way back to power, that the time has come for real change. And I am even more convinced now than ever, after a summer spent travelling the length and breadth of Scotland, from Stranraer to Shetland, from Aberdeenshire to Ayrshire, holding public meetings, visiting and meeting with workers, with trade unions, with community groups and businesses. Real change is needed. And let me say at the very outset, we don't need another independence referendum to change Scotland as far as I'm concerned. We've just had one, and the majority of people do not want one. And as we meet here this week with the prospect of a general election, I can make clear today that the next Labour manifesto will oppose another independence referendum. We don't need a referendum to change Scotland. We need the election of a Scottish Labour government to change Scotland. And we need a confident Labour Party reawakening hope out of despair right across these shared islands. Because too much inequality is unrecognised, unacknowledged, but worse, it is unchallenged. In Scotland today, the richest 1% own more personal wealth than the whole of the poorest 50% put together. So instead of a fervent devotion to inequality from the Tories and timidity and mediocrity from the Nationalists, it is time for moral courage and audacity from Labour, which is why I have said that the time has come to consider a wealth tax. A 1% windfall tax on Scotland's wealthiest 10% would raise £3.7 billion to invest in public services. And it is why I am saying today that Labour has unfinished business on land reform. Labour abolished feudalism in the first term of the Scottish Parliament. But 20 years later, we are still living with feudal ownership. 432 private landowners still own half of all privately owned land in Scotland. And with ownership comes power. We need land justice because our earth is a common treasury. We need land ownership in Scotland for the many, not the few. And we need this in the economy too, which is why we want workers to have the statutory right to buy the enterprise they work in when it is put up for sale or facing closure. Because why on earth shouldn't the people who create the wealth own the wealth that they create? We need more planning and less market. The people need a government prepared to act, not simply react. And we are the Labour Party. So once again, we will be what we always should have been, the party of organised labour. So trade unions will have a central role to play, not only in defending their members' interests in the present, but in planning the new economy for the future. We will overhaul regional selective assistance and reform public procurement to support local industries and homegrown businesses, so that never again do we see factories and fabrication yards standing idle whilst offshore wind farms in UK inshore waters, paid for by public money and energy user levies, are built in factories and yards overseas. And the redistribution of power means something else: constitutional reform. Of course, this is not a demand limited to Scotland. There is restlessness in England for more powers at a local and regional level. So let me make it clear from this conference today that a federal Britain with greater powers for the Scottish Parliament is the radical solution that I want to see. We need new powers to reflect the new realities of Brexit, which is why there is a Labour guarantee that devolved powers returning from the European Union will be transferred to the devolved governments, and that we will enter a new era of co-determination in a new era of democratic politics. So our task in this party is to reinvigorate politics. It is to build up our movement for democracy and socialism. It is to lead a manufacturing strategy as part of a plan for jobs and industry, which goes beyond the market, which has a regional dimension, building a full employment economy, tackling climate change, providing decent homes, bringing an end to PFI, and heralding a renaissance in public ownership. And our mission to end once and for all child poverty, to eradicate health inequalities, to invest in a national health service free at the point of need, to bring dignity in retirement to our pensioners, and all based on a socialism which is both visionary but practical and rooted in the daily experiences of working people. So we are a radical party of change once more. We are getting back to these our traditions and these our principles. We are proud of our history. We are proud of our socialism, which goes back to Keir Hardie and the pioneers. And my final appeal today to anyone watching this, listening to this, is if you share our vision of change for Scotland, come and join us. Be part of this movement for real change. Because in the end, We write our own history. And if we stick to our convictions and have the courage of our convictions, with new energy, but rediscovering our old idealism, we will not only win again, we will deserve to win again. Thank you very much.